Harry Potter. We'll start with the main character. He's obviously one of the 6 characters whose desire we know. He of course desired a family. Becoming an orphan at the age of 1, this was something he never had. In the book, there was a whole line of ancestors that were looking back at him in the mirror, but in the film, he only saw his parents James and Lily. Then later, he saw himself holding the Philosopher's Stone, but that was just in that moment. His true desire was having a family. Hermione Granger. This is another one of the 6 characters whose desire we know, as Rowling revealed what Hermione would see after the series ended. The timeline in which Rowling gave this answer was the summer right before the Deathly Hallows took place, and JK said that she would see herself and her friends alive and unscathed, Voldemort defeated, and herself and Ron in a romantic embrace. Also, I'm going to add a small little theory of what else she would see. If she looked in the mirror at any given time besides that summer Rowling expanded on, I think it's very likely that she would see herself freeing house elves and having a leading role in the ministry. Ron Weasley. And now we move on to another character whose desire has been confirmed in the series. Ron of course saw himself as Quidditch captain, head boy, and saw himself standing apart from his older brothers, being better than all of them.
That's me! Only I'm head boy, and I'm holding the Quidditch cup. And bloody hell, I'm Quidditch captain too!
Ginny Weasley. We never found out what Ginny would see, but I think it's pretty obvious. She desired Harry to notice her for most of the series. When they finally got together, she told him that she was always waiting for him, even when she was dating other guys. If she looked in the mirror, she would of course see herself and Harry together romantically. Draco Malfoy. Draco desired power for most of the series, but when he finally got a chance to hold some power as a Death Eater, he did not want it anymore. So I'm going to go over 2 different moments in his life. Before he got the Dark Mark, I think he would have seen himself as a loyal and high-ranking Death Eater just like his father. But after becoming a Death Eater, I think he would see himself without the Dark Mark on his arm, showing that he had never joined Voldemort in the first place. Neville Longbottom. When looking at Neville's story, you see that he is a bit of a tragic character. His parents were tortured into madness by Death Eaters when Neville was only a baby, meaning they lost their minds, forgetting and having no idea who their son was. When looking in the mirror, Neville would almost certainly see his parents with their minds intact, and both of them there to raise him and watch him grow up. Luna Lovegood. Luna was raised by her eccentric father Xenophilius, and he did a great job raising his kind-hearted and down-to-earth daughter. However, something was always missing in Luna's life, and that was a mother. She lost her mother Pandora when she was just 9 years old, and I think when looking in the mirror, Luna would see her mother standing there next to her. Sirius Black. The best days of Sirius's life were his Hogwarts years. He was part of the Marauders, the group of boys that consisted of himself, James Potter, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, and they ruled the school in the 1970s. Things became disastrous for the group shortly after finishing up at Hogwarts though, as Pettigrew betrayed them, which led to James's death. Sirius was framed for the murder of Peter Pettigrew and was sent off to Azkaban, and Lupin believed that Sirius was the one who betrayed James and killed Peter. So if Sirius looked in the mirror, I think he would see himself, James, and Lupin young and at Hogwarts again. Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore is another character whose desire we actually know. In The Crimes of Grindelwald, we saw a younger Dumbledore looking into the mirror, and he saw himself and Grindelwald making their blood pact, a moment he wished he could go back to, as he was in love with Grindelwald and he loved that moment. Well, that was what he saw in the 1920s. Rowling later revealed what he would see in the 1990s, where the original series took place. She said he would see his family alive, whole, and happy, with his father Percival, who would have never gone to Azkaban, his mother Kendra, who would not have been killed, Ariana properly using magic and alive, and Aberforth reconciled to him. Severus Snape. Snape dedicated his life to Lily Evans. He betrayed his master Lord Voldemort trying to save her, and when he wasn't able to, he spent years risking his life to protect Lily's son, all because he still loved her even 17 years after her death. I think it's pretty obvious what he would see. He would see himself romantically involved with Lily. Fred Weasley. In the earlier books, I think Fred would see himself and his twin brother George running a very successful joke shop, as they have been working on this for many years. Ron told us that explosions would always be heard coming from the twins' room, dating back to before the first book even took place, and we would later find out that this was them experimenting with joke products, so it's clear that this was a desire of Fred for many years. George Weasley. This is probably one of the most tragic ones on this list. George lost his other half in the Battle of Hogwarts, and he would never be the same. When looking in the mirror, George would see Fred back by his side, alive and well. The most tragic thing though is the fact that George did not need the mirror of Erised to be reminded of his fallen brother, because he's reminded of Fred every time he looks in a normal mirror.
You okay, Freddy? Yeah. Me too.
Percy Weasley.
Simply piano.
My brother said to me,
I'm gonna learn the piano. And she said right back,
I'll do it faster, so
So
let's
let's
go. We downloaded Simply Piano on our phone.
on the phone.
The app listens while we play, and it tells us when we're wrong. He then learned thoroughly.
Percy was very ambitious and had big aspirations. If he looked in the mirror any time before the Deathly Hallows, he would see himself as a very high-ranking ministry employee and maybe even as minister. But most of all though, he would see his family respecting him rather than making fun of him for his ambition. Molly Weasley. I'm gonna go over 3 different parts of Molly's life. First, before she had kids, she would have seen her brothers Fabian and Gideon alive, as both of them lost their lives during the First Wizarding War. Then, around the time of the Order of the Phoenix and the Half-Blood Prince, she would have seen Percy and the rest of the family back together, as Percy had disowned the rest of the Weasleys, and Molly's other children hated their brother for this. Then, after the Deathly Hallows, though she had Percy back, she had of course lost Fred. So she would again see her family back together in the mirror, but instead of Percy returning this time, it would be Fred returning. Arthur Weasley. Arthur was the breadwinner for the Weasley family, but he was never able to provide what he desired. He blamed himself for the family being poor, so I think he would have seen himself making more money, but at the same time, still doing what he loved, working with and for Muggles. And like his wife, if he looked in the mirror after the Deathly Hallows, he would have seen Fred alive as well. Charlie Weasley. Charlie would share the same desire as his mother and siblings, so when looking in the mirror, he would see Fred by his side. Bill Weasley. The oldest of the Weasley clan was viciously mauled by Greyback and the Half-Blood Prince, an incident that left him with permanent and incurable scars on his face. They were so bad that they made him look unrecognizable afterwards. I think if he looked in the mirror, he would see his face back to normal. And of course, like all of the other Weasleys, if he looked in the mirror after the Deathly Hallows, he too would see Fred alive. Rubius Hagrid. I think Hagrid would see a few things in the mirror. He would see himself as a fully fledged wizard having never been expelled. He would see his deceased father next to him, and he would have a pet dragon that he could realistically tame and care for without any problems. Peter Pettigrew. Pettigrew was a coward that surrounded himself with strong people to protect him. First the Marauders, and then Voldemort and the Death Eaters. I think Pettigrew was too cowardly to even dream of being strong himself. That would not even cross his insecure mind. I think he would instead see himself surrounded by the strongest group of people imaginable, all ready to protect and defend him. Fleur Delacour. In The Goblet of Fire, we as an audience saw Fleur as stuck up. But as the series went on, we realized that this was not the case at all. She's actually incredibly selfless and down to earth. This was seen on full effect at the end of The Half-Blood Prince. Mrs. Weasley assumed that Fleur would break off her engagement with Bill after he was mauled, but Fleur said she wasn't going anywhere. Bill was the love of her life and she was going to marry him no matter what. If she looked in the mirror, I think Fleur would see Bill without his scars. And not because she didn't want an ugly husband, but because she wanted Bill to be happy in his own skin. I think her own desires would come second to her husband's. Minerva McGonagall. McGonagall lived a tragic life before the series started. There are so many sad moments to point out, but just going over the main thing, she lost her younger brother who was murdered by Death Eaters, and after falling in love, marrying, and moving in with the love of her life, Elphinstone Yearcord, he was killed not long after that, breaking McGonagall's heart. I think Minerva would see Elphinstone and the life they would have had he not died, as well as seeing her younger brother alive and standing next to her. Tom Riddle, aka Lord Voldemort. This is another one of the 6 characters whose desire has been confirmed by Rowling. She said he would see himself more powerful than anyone in the world, he would be immortal, and there would be no Harry Potter there to stop him.
Let us hope that Mr. Potter will always be around to save the day.
Don't worry. I will be.
Bellatrix Lestrange.